Hello, I'd like to welcome you to this training module on how to be a more successful owner-operator. My name is Todd Amon, and I'm the president of ATBS, and I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I'd like to congratulate you for taking this step towards improving your business and wanting to learn a little bit more about how to be successful. I'd like to start off by telling you just a little bit about ATBS and who we are so that you know where the information that I'm presenting is coming from. We're the largest business services provider in the country serving independent contractors. We work with over 40,000 independent contractors in the trucking business, and we actually work with over 1,800 Swift independent contractors. We've done that for about 10 years, and the reason that contractors choose to work with us and also carriers such as Swift is that we have a really strong track record of making contractors more successful by helping them manage their business and pay attention to the things that are important. And so today we're going to spend some time talking about a few of those things to hopefully help you improve your business and your net income and all the things that you work so hard for. So to start off with, we're going to talk about the owner-operator money-making model and how do you do more and make more money as an independent contractor at Swift. And I'd like to frame this up in a conversation about a career path, and some of you may have thought about your job this way, and some of you may have not thought about the way you run your business this way, but I think it's important for anybody to kind of think about the progression of what they've done in their career. So probably everybody that's listening to this has started out as a student driver and kind of learned how to drive the truck and how to be safe and those kinds of things, and you progress to being a company driver and you learn about company policies and customers and routes and things like that, and like anybody, you want to be the best at what you do, and you ultimately wind up progressing to becoming a lease purchase contractor to get your truck and becoming an independent driver rather than a company driver. That's a big step that a lot of folks fail in, and so listening to this, you may be a company driver thinking about taking that step, or you may have already taken that step. Our goal is to kind of get you through that progression and help you to think about things that will help you be successful. And ultimately, the goal of a lot of folks is to go out and buy their own truck and own their own truck, and typically you wind up leasing back on with a carrier. But that's kind of the career progression. We see a lot of people fail through each of those steps, and so hopefully today we're going to give you a few concrete things that you can take and listen to and think about that will help you be more successful in these steps. So to think about how I make more money as an owner-operator, we kind of boil it down to 5 simple things: velocity, margin, cash, growth, and customers. And I'm going to talk more specifically about each of those, but the first one I want to talk about is velocity. Velocity, as an independent contractor, you really have 2 things that help you be successful on the revenue side, which is velocity. Number 1 is your asset, which is your truck, and number 2 is your time. So we're going to talk about those things more specifically. Second is margin. I think of that as net income. So after you've generated revenue and paid your expenses, you have what's left at the end called your net income. There's 2 ways to make your net income bigger. You can increase your revenue or your velocity, or you can cut your costs. And if you can do both of those things at the same time, it's amazing what can happen to your take-home pay. Third thing is cash. And a smart banker once told me that profit cures a lot of bills, but profit cures a lot of ills, but cash flow pays the bills. And so at the end of the day, it's all about cash, and that's what you use to set up retirement accounts and pay your rent or mortgage at home and buy a car and buy groceries and all those things. So we're going to talk about cash. Then we're going to talk about growth. If you're doing something well, you want to do more of it and make more money. So we're going to talk about growth a little bit. Lastly, we're going to talk about customers, and there's probably going to be a twist in this that you may not be thinking about, but customers in the end are, what make us all successful. They're who we work for, and they're who pay our bills, so we're going to talk about customers as well. So if we start off talking about velocity, which, again, think of really in terms of revenue, I want you to think about a few things. You learned a lot about velocity as a company driver. You learned about where the routes are, where the customers are, how I set up with my driver manager proper delivery appointments, and how I plan my route and those kinds of things, but you can always get better at that every day, and it's really important to think about how you work with Swift and your driver manager and the planners to always be on time and use the most effective use of your time. Remember, you have a truck and you have time, and if you don't use both those things to their maximum effectiveness, your revenue is not going to be what it should be. Next thing is planning your time off around freight cycles and those kinds of things. And I just want to talk for a minute a little bit more specifically about how you use your time as an owner-operator, because a wasted hour or a misspent hour you can never get back, and it's lost revenue. On this slide, I show kind of an industry average freight trend, and if you look at it, you see the bar under Friday is the biggest bar, the bar under Monday is the second biggest, and Wednesday is the third biggest. What those are is freight cycles. That's how busy the days of the work are from a shipping perspective in the United States. So, I was down here a few months ago at Swift, and we were doing some thinking and brainstorming about, how can independent contractors be more successful in working with Swift. And one of the things that came to light, we had the director of the maintenance department in the meeting, and we started talking about when independent contractors do their maintenance in Swift shops. And what he said was Friday morning at about 8 o'clock, it was amazing how long the line got of folks, company drivers and owner-operators that wanted to get work done on their truck. And so when you think about that and you look at the bar on Friday and you realize it's the busiest day of the week from a shipping perspective, it doesn't really make sense to tie up your asset and your time all day Friday trying to get work done on your truck, because once you're done, you're going to sit Saturday and Sunday. As we talked further, and I said, what is the least busy day in the shop? He said Wednesday. So even though it's a pretty busy, freight day when you look at it, it's a lot less busy than Friday. So maybe it makes sense to plan your time Wednesday when the shop opens early in the morning and get in for an hour or two and get the work done so that you're prepared to do work the rest of the week, and you can get under load Friday and maybe even run over the weekend when there's not a lot of freight available. So again, just little things like that. That's just one tidbit, but you got to think about your business that way and how I can be proactive to be the most productive person and generate the most velocity that I can. Next, we're going to talk about margins. So, as we've talked about revenue a little bit, we next talk about costs, fixed and variable costs, and I'm going to talk you through two things when it relates to costs. Ultimately, after we take our costs away from our revenue, we wind up with our net income or our margin. And let's talk about that a little bit. And before I go too far, in the next two slides, I want to tell you something. And what I'm going to tell you is, if I could tell you there's a place out there that you could go work and make 25 cents more per mile, you'd probably perk up a little bit. You've been listening to me for a few minutes now, and maybe you got kind of tired of hearing some of the accounting terms and those kinds of things, and you tuned out. But pay attention to the next two slides, because I'm going to show you how to make 25 cents more per mile. You don't have to leave and find another carrier. You don't have to find a new industry or do anything different. You're an independent contractor for a reason, and it's because you want to be successful. So, let's really look at these next two slides and see how you can really affect your bottom line. So what this shows is fixed costs, and not to get too technical, a fixed cost is something that you've got to pay for no matter what happens. If you park your truck in your driveway for the next month, you've still got to make a truck payment, insurance, professional fees like your accounting or your legal fees or those kinds of things. But once you pay those costs, you don't have to pay them again. You just pay them once a month. It's like a rent payment or a mortgage payment or those kinds of things. So it's a fixed cost no matter what happens. If we look at the fixed costs, an average truck payment for a Swift independent contractor is $2,256. The insurance coverages to go along with that truck are $395, and the professional fees are $80. So we come up with a total of fixed costs of $2,731. If we're an average driver and we drive 10,000 miles, which is what a solo independent contractor does on average, those fixed costs cost us 27 cents a mile. But let's say we really paid attention and we thought about velocity and revenue, and we figured out how to maximize our productivity and get more miles. And so I show, for example purposes, a training IC on the right half of this slide that's actually going to get 15,000 miles a month rather than 10,000. Look what happens to our cost per mile. Our fixed costs, remember, they don't change. I don't have to pay more money that month just because I drove more miles. So we actually take our cost from 27 cents a mile to 18 cents a mile. I just gave myself a 9 cent per mile pay increase simply because I was more productive. It's a really powerful message, and a lot of drivers, once they get this, you can actually double your net income once you reach a break-even point. And we don't have time in this webinar to go into detail of what a break-even is, but it's a simple concept. The more miles you run, once you cover those fixed costs, the more money you make. We go to the next slide, and I know every one of you care deeply about fuel, and you try and save money on fuel by reduced idle time and those kinds of things and getting better mile per gallon, but I just want to show you the power of what that really means. So at the top of this slide, we list kind of the basics of the Swift fuel surcharge that help compensate you for, fuel costs when they're really high. And so on the left-hand side, we have an independent contractor that's getting 7 miles per gallon, and on the right-hand side, we have an independent contractor that's getting 5 miles per gallon. And if we just talk through the numbers a little bit, the average fuel cost for a guy, and this is when diesel fuel's costing somewhere between $3.50 and $4 a gallon, the average fuel cost is going to be $76,800 for the guy getting 7 miles per gallon. The fuel rebate that you get back from Swift, because fuel prices are high, is $56,400. Doesn't matter what your miles per gallon are, you're going to get the same rebate either way. So my net fuel cost, if I'm getting 7 miles per gallon, are going to be $20,400 divided by 120,000 miles a year. That's 17 cents a mile. On the flip side, if I'm a guy that doesn't really manage my fuel, I drive fast, I idle a lot, and I don't do all the things necessary to take care of my fuel costs, and I get down around 5 miles per gallon, look at the difference. My net fuel costs are going to be $39,600 divided by the same miles is 33 cents a mile. So the difference there is 16 cents. So hopefully you got, over the last 2 slides, we just talked about 25 cents a mile in your business, and it just amazes me so many times every day. I hear, as we talk to owner-operators from our office in Denver on the phone, about guys who say, I don't like where I'm driving. I hear they're paying more money over at this carrier, and I'm going to leave and go there. And, it's 1 or 2 or 3 cents that they're talking about. Really, truly think about. We just talked about 25 cents a mile that you can improve your business in just 2 simple areas. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about cash. And remember what I said at the beginning, that my old banker friend told me, profit cures a lot of ills, but cash flow pays the bills. And so in this scenario, we use, again, some real swift averages from the drivers that we work with. So the velocity up top, the miles that this person drove weekly was 2,452. The revenue that they made based on that, at 92 cents a mile was $2,206. The fuel rebate that they got paid back for the fuel surcharge was $772. Take away all the expenses associated with the business, and we get a net income or a margin of $859. So really that's what should have come across on your settlement check, but a lot of independent contractors are amazed when they get their settlement check, and it's actually, half of the amount they expected. What they don't realize is the cash advances that were taken on the road. And it's so easy that money burns a hole in the pocket of so many drivers that I know. And what they wind up with is a lot less than they expected at the end of the day, and the wife isn't happy at home because she didn't get a big enough check to cover the bills and those kinds of things. So let me just talk about cash advances real quick, because I see it as an area where a lot of drivers fail. So the guys that do well and make money use advances really simply for their business expenses on the road, things like paying tolls and scales, the stuff that you've got to do to, move a load and make things happen. And, they might pay themselves a moderate amount for their road expenses, whether it's food or those kinds of things. Successful drivers I know will actually stock up their food in a refrigerator and eat a lot out of the truck because meals on the road are expensive. The guys that I know that don't manage cash well, that always wonder where their paycheck went and why they didn't get one, and they wind up blaming the company that they work for, are the guys that take the maximum advances every time they get a chance, and they wind up wasting that money, whether it's in a casino or on video games, or they see something nice that would look good on the front of their truck and they buy that because they got a $100 bill in their pocket. So it's something you really got to be conscious of every day. Don't maximize your advances taking cash away from the company because you can. Use the minimal amount so that you can maximize what you get in your paycheck every single week. So growth, if we're doing something well and we've learned some lessons and we're being successful, how do we do more of it? Time management, we've already talked a little bit about it, and so, key is managing your time and being successful and knowing freight cycles and those kinds of things. But the other thing is, you need to think of yourself as a can-do owner-operator. You don't want to be one of those guys that says, it's snowing and I don't want to put chains on the truck. I'm just going to park and wait it out for a couple of days or, a few hours or whatever. You don't want to be one of those folks that says, I don't want to run north of I-40 because the weather's bad up there. I don't want to go to the northeast because it's congested. The most successful owner-operators I know have a can-do attitude. They're not the guys that say, the company guys get all the light loads, I get all the heavy loads, I got to turn down some heavy loads to make a point to the company. They're just people that say yes, and they just go all freight, and they make money. Two of the most successful ways I've seen for drivers as contractors to make money at Swift, again, you have time and you have an asset, and if you can use both of those more effectively, just think if there were 2 of you and you could drive double the miles that you drove every day, how much money could you make? Being a trainer or even a team is one way to do that. You multiply yourself, and it's not for everybody, but if it's something that you think you would like to do, we see people that train and are in mentor programs at Swift as independent contractors make a lot more money simply because they cover their fixed costs a lot quicker in the month, kind of like we talked about early on, and once they get over those fixed costs, the rest of that money goes straight into their paycheck. So again, think about how you can get more miles and use your time more effectively as an independent contractor, and that's how you grow your business. So the last thing I'm going to really talk about is customers, and I kind of told you in the beginning, something that you may not think about. We all know that Swift serves customers like Walmart and Costco and folks like that, and it's your goal, and you were trained as a company driver to be really professional and do a great job with those folks. be professional in appearance, deliver on time. Because if you don't do a good job for those folks, then nobody has any freight to haul because those customers are going to fire you. The second thing I want you to think about, and again, realize that I don't work for Swift in any way, shape, or form. I work with over 100 truck lines in the U.S. What I try and teach an owner-operator to think about is the person he's contracted to is actually his number one customer. The carrier that you're working for is your customer. You chose to work there. They didn't make you work there. And your job is to serve them, and your job is to think about how I can be a better business partner and provide better information and better service and better communication. Don't get mad when something goes wrong. Think of them as your customer and think about it as an opportunity to work out a problem so that you can work better in the future. If you have an attitude like that, it's going to serve you well and go a long ways towards making you successful and showing the carrier that you work for that you're someone that wants to help do things in a better way, not just create problems. So again, you really have two customers. One is the one you're hauling the freight for ultimately that you're going to deliver the load to, but two is the person that writes your paycheck and pays you money every single week, and that's Swift. Last thing I'm going to talk about is at ATBS. I've already said we work with a lot of different carriers, and we track a lot of benchmark data. And on this slide, I'm going to just show you a few key things. You can see on the left a lot of different carriers that we work with, and we rank on a regular basis, and we share the numbers with the management of Swift so we can kind of see how Swift owner-operators are doing compared to the average. So let's just go through these rankings real quick. And when we look at miles, Swift owner-operators rank 7 out of 24 carriers that we work with, and this is specifically in the dry van industry. And so, for me, that's a great number. What it tells me is the miles are at Swift. If you want to run and you're willing to do the right things, you can get the miles at Swift. That's not always the case at some other carriers. If we look at revenue per mile, Swift is kind of in the middle of the pack. And, I think you know that as well as anybody. Swift's never going to be a premium paying company on a revenue per mile basis because it's just not the model of the business. They're in a competitive industry where they pay average. And, that's not a bad thing. They don't pay below average. It's just an average pay per mile. But when you think about the miles, when you can get significantly above average and you can compare that with average pay per mile, what that really means when we get to total revenue is Swift's in the top third when you consider the velocity revenue perspective. So, when you think about that, that's a good opportunity. If I'm in the top third from my revenue perspective, that's a great thing. And again, remember, we talked about how you can give yourself a 25-cent a mile pay increase, so don't worry about whether you're making 92 cents a mile or 94 cents a mile. Concentrate on your business, and the rest of it will take care of itself. If we look at maintenance costs, they've always been really good at Swift, and one of the reasons is the lease purchase model here utilizes new trucks that are under warranty and perform really well. So at 5 cents a mile average for maintenance, Swift is number 3 out of 24 carriers, which is about as good as it gets. And so you can be confident that leasing a truck here is going to at least provide you an asset that you don't have to spend a lot of money and worry about. If we look at fuel costs, and if I can leave you with one thing today, and we're nearly done, we have one more slide, one thing that you guys can improve, and Swift as a whole with the independent contractors can improve upon, is fuel cost per mile. Swift's a little bit below average, kind of right in the middle at 54 cents a mile, 15 out of 24. The thing that we talked about on fuel costs, the difference between 7 miles per gallon and 5 miles per gallon, or, truly even 7 miles per gallon versus 6.5 miles per gallon, you're talking about thousands of dollars per year. And, if I can convince you of one thing, spend a little bit of time every single day figuring out how you can get better fuel economy on your truck, and it's going to make you tens of thousands of dollars more per year and more in your career. This is an area that I think we need to all work on because I'd like to see Swift in the top 25% for average fuel costs for their owner-operators because it's going to mean a lot of money for every driver out there. So, again, fuel costs are an important piece that we need to improve upon as a group. So when we get down to net income, again, and you look, Swift's right in the middle of the pack. It's not a bad thing. It's okay to be the middle of the pack, but I know Swift is striving to become a best-in-class carrier, and the only way they can do that is if you become a best-in-class owner-operator. The single biggest thing that you can do, again, to reiterate, is to think about your fuel costs. If we could get that, down by 3 or 4 cents a mile, and we can improve fuel economy around here, really pretty quickly as a pack, Swift owner-operators can move up in the top 25% as far as net income. It's that easy. You don't need a big pay increase. You don't need them to get you a bunch more miles. All those things are, fine. It boils down to managing fuel costs, I think, is probably the biggest opportunity that we have. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this training session. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and if you need any more information, phone number and website are on here. Feel free to give us a call, and we'd love to help you with your business. Thanks.